Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. Happy to be back with my colleagues. I want to join the previous colleagues before me in congratulating first St. Lucians, as well as the West Indies women's cricket team for making us very proud. I'm still wearing one of the bands, ICC P20, very proudly. My colleagues may observe the color if they wish, but it's not the issue. I think we know that anytime West Indies is doing well, the region is happy. People have even claimed that productivity goes up. And so anything that would, bring success to our people in the region is great. And I'm very happy that St. Lucia, our country, was part of that success. And the Darren Sammy Stadium got some very good marketing. And I hope that future competitions hopefully will come our way. And I think everyone will agree that maybe it was a very good investment by the St. Lucia Labour Party to build that stadium that we're all very proud of today. So once again, Madam President, I am very happy to associate with all the comments that were made about the West Indies cricket team. To the motion, Madam President, that refers to the borrowing of this sum of money for the purpose of financing and the services of consultants, and I note that keyword, to conduct implementation labs, workshops, etc., and up performance management and delivery. I would not at any time find any difficulty in any country making sure
Proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I was saying I would not have any difficulty with any country that engages in any activity to improve its capacity to implement or to deliver quality governance. I have no difficulty with that. We know that almost every nation engages in building that kind of capacity. But, Madam President, my question is, it's threefold. First of all, given the fiscal situation that we currently are aware of and our current debt situation, public debt, do we really believe that at this time, that this is the right time and this is the right activity that the government should engage in, particularly when we look at the sum of money that's being borrowed? My other observation is the timing of this initiative. The government came into office on the premise that it will deliver and it will make things right that were not right. 2.5 years into government, this is being done. Why is it being done now? And if so, what has the government been doing in the last 2.5 years that requires that we now want to borrow $11 or $13 million from the CDB for training, essentially for someone to tell us, to come and tell us what we need to do and how we need to do it. 2.5 years into government. So I'm very concerned about what this has to do with the timing of this move and why now. My third concern is, Madam President, I totally agree that it is important to build capacity and to train persons. But where do you start that? Is that something you begin when you have hired trained professionals? Most of the people in the public service, our public servants, did not receive their training after they became employed. Their basic qualifications, experience, their CV is what would have allowed them to become employable. Of course, knowledge has evolves and you must do continuous training and refreshing. But they would have been qualified to get those positions based on what they bring to the table. And so we cannot think as a country that it is the government training on the job that will make our public service more efficient and more effective. My argument here, Madam President, is where does the training begin? Or where should it begin? And so instead of borrowing $13 million 2 years into government, 2.5 years into government, to have seminars and workshops and labs, whatever you want to call it, shouldn't we have considered spending that money at the right time, in the right place? And one of our colleagues mentioned the platform that we are creating for training and professionals. That platform, Madam President, the best place to start is in school. This is the first place people get training. And it's not only in skill and in delivery of projects. It's the basic training that makes it difficult later on, if they don't get it from the beginning, that it makes it difficult for us as professionals to train them. They are people that have been considered to be not trainable because they have attained degrees, they have been qualified, but there are some basic principles and ethical practices that they have not learned. And school is one of the places, Madam President, we must never underestimate that. I know that everybody know that I relate very well to the school system, but I believe in it. And I think that instead of training, well, I'm not saying instead of focusing your training and your resources at that level, you need to focus a lot more on the point at which the training is more effective and more efficient. And that is in the school system. So while we go out there and we want to borrow all that money to pay people to tell us what most of us already know, that's a fact. Most of us already know. And that may be the reason why one may speculate about the public servant's attitude towards the training. But instead of doing that, Madam President, why can't some of that money, or why can't that borrowing be targeted more towards a long-term strategy and a proper education plan that will make it less necessary for us to spend that kind of money on people who have been trained and who have been qualified and who are now holding very important positions in the public service. Madam President, based on the explanation provided by the leader of government business, a number of areas were identified. So we've been told that the money is needed to borrow so that we can provide that training in 6 areas, 3 social and 3 economic. We were told education, healthcare, and tourism, I think on crime, were the 3 areas of social characteristics, and agriculture, tourism, and infrastructure were the areas of economics. Madam President, I will not attempt to speak to all the other areas, but if we want to know what is wrong with the system, whether it is, for example, the judiciary or the education system, it is important that we speak to the practitioners in the system. We don't make assumptions that, because if you're going to do implementation workshops or consultants, people need to know when they come to speak to us, what exactly is the problem they're speaking to. So if you're going to have a workshop, for example, on implementation of a project in education, you have to hear from the practitioners of education who will inform you of what the issues are that need to be addressed. Otherwise, you'll be coming to do something without any focus. So I suppose the leader of government business will elaborate on that when he gets to rebut. Madam President, while we were listening to the justification provided for the borrowing for all of these seminars and workshops, I want to ask whether we really need those consultants to come and tell us what we need to do about, let us say, Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, because education is one of the areas that was identified. Do we really need a consultant to come and tell us what we need to do about Sir Arthur? In the last year alone, haven't we had enough indicators of the problems or the nature of the problems that occur? Whether it is related to the building, whether it is related to the management of Sir Arthur Lewis, where you have the board that resigned in entirety, whether it has to do with the programs that are being offered, the types of programs that are being offered that you may want to review, the curriculum and so on. Do we really need any consultant from Malaysia or wherever to come to tell us what we should do about this, Madam President? Haven't our practitioners, our lecturers at Sir Arthur Lewis, our students' council, our students themselves, haven't those people clearly articulated the concerns that we are dealing with? It has been ventilated very well in the media. And so when we go and sit and do those consultations, we have to ask ourselves, to what end? What is it that we are going to achieve? When I had training, I expect that there's going to be a component that will measure the success of the training. And in all of the deliberations that I've heard, I have not really heard of any mechanism to measure the success of or the value that is going to be given for the use of this training program. Right? I know you'll probably do your little evaluation and so on, but this is just, ceremonial. When you're going to invest that kind of money in any program, you need to have some performance indicators, something that will measure the value of the investment that you are making, if you call it an investment. So I haven't heard that. So I'm hoping that there is some kind of, and I know that one may argue that you will have to wait to see how it plays out in the people in which you have trained. But since the CDB is lending us money, I am sure that as a country, our performance indicators have to be, there. And so we have to make sure that upfront that this is, even at least the expectations are outlined. I haven't heard much of that, Madam President. Now, I mentioned Sir Arthur Lewis, and I want to mention a few departments that I think we can turn to that can give us quite a lot of what we are paying for. We are paying a lot of money for information or for delivery of information that we actually have the capacity to deliver. And I'm not really going to get into the argument of the public servants, because we know that we have competent public servants. And some of them sometimes do not do what we expect of them all the time. They are human. But in the main, I think we can say that our public services in Lucia has a high percentage of very committed and hardworking people. But, Madam President, if we say so, we also have some organizations that are made up of public servants that can provide us with quality feedback and direction as to how we go about doing what we do, that we do not have to spend that money on consultants. I'll just give 3 examples associated with education. We have the Curriculum and Management Department. We call it CAMDU in short. This department is staffed with trained professionals in curriculum development. People who go through the education system in St. Lucia. The government, in some cases, spends money to ensure that these people receive quite a lot of upgrade and ongoing training. Every professional in that department is someone who has been well trained and educated in the field of curriculum development. It's been 2 years, 2 years and a half. Not at once or not one time have I heard anything in the policies of this government, particularly in education, referring to any of those departments that have been set up to do just that. We can also look at another partner, the teachers' union, the unions. The unions do have people who understand the plight of workers, and they also have concerns about some of the things that are not going well within the public service. And if we want to be effective in implementation of our programs, the unions can give us a lot of guidance. And we need to engage them. And sometimes when we do those consultancies, we do so without engaging our trade unions, and we miss out on opportunities where we can get proper information that can allow us to address the correct problems or the right problems. Madam President, another good example, and I'm very, very well familiar with this one because I've worked with them, is the National Principals Association. Some of the issues that we intend to address by bringing consultants, and I have been at some of those workshops, Madam President, when we have had to sit and listen to professionals who are highly paid, telling us things that we know, and it's true. But as decent people, as principals who have been granted the government's time to go and sit to listen, we show some respect. But the truth is, a lot of the time, we do know and we understand exactly what they're saying because we're familiar with the information. And so I am saying to you that I am part of the experience that we have had as public servants, where this kind of thing is being done, and we sit there and we wonder whether it wasn't better for somebody to ask us what we think and to direct those resources towards the institutions that we run. Of course, with some measures of accountability to allow us to fix the problems. Sure. We have to start demonstrating a little more confidence in the human resource base in this country, Madam President. We need to. And I know this is not the first or the last time we're going to have consultation. I am not going to deny that previous governments have had consultants. Yes, but it cannot be about that. And I think one of our members, the independent member, mentioned the exorbitant sum of money. Why are we spending all of that money and we're saying things are hard? We're taking cuts here and there. We're asking people to take lump sum and so on, and instead of delivering increases, and we are spending all this money for people to tell us what we already know. Madam President, these three entities that I identified, I think that between them or among them, we could have saved ourselves quite a few $1 million that we could have put back into their organizations, maybe not directly, but indirectly, or spent in areas that they would have seen as priority and guide the government. Because I don't think that everything we need to know exists somewhere in the cloud out there. Madam President, it doesn't. The culture of a country, the culture of its public service must be understood. Some of these consultants come in here, Madam President, particularly those from foreign firms who have very good reputations, their background and the understanding of the people that they're talking to is not accurate. People need to be able to relate to what they're telling you. Some of the models that have been presented to us, Madam President, are not congruent with our current system. And I can give you examples. I have gone to consultations when the models of Singapore, Canada, Finland have been recommended. Of course, best practice. Best practice is good. But some of the principles or not the principles, but the practices that have been recommended through these models, we have, as practitioners, have had to question them because they do not relate to the realities that we face in our country. So we don't go and pick up things wholesale, and people from foreign countries who have evidence of things that have worked in metropolitan countries in a different culture, in a different background, think that what we need to do is to go and sit and listen to them and try to implement those things in our system, which is very different. And that is why I always refer to the value of the contribution of the St. Lucian public servants to those kinds of initiatives. I'm not saying that you cannot do consultancy. I mean, we know that. But it must redound to some kind of value. You cannot spend all that money and it actually does not redound to what you are looking to do, your objectives, because you have decided to leave out some very important entities within your system that can guide you. Madam President, thirdly, I listened to the way that this thing was being justified. And I get the impression that we believe in this country that some of the things that we are doing on behalf of public servants, particularly when it involves borrowing money, is basically a favor or we're granting them this because they need it. Madam President, governments are elected to serve and to provide the country with security, with its needs. And I think we need to start moving away from that type of mindset. And it is particularly so in the aspect of this borrowing that relates to the social areas. Crime, education, and I think the other one was health. Yeah, right? What we must accept and understand in any society, and the model societies, the model economies in the world can teach that to us, that it is the responsibility of the state, the responsibility of government to provide a quality health service or health system, quality education, and a safe environment for its citizens. It is the responsibility of the state. Now, nobody has said that there is no good in partnering with businesses and entities to enhance those institutions. We know some of the top universities in the world actually have very good alliances with businesses, and they basically run themselves. They're self-sufficient. But note at what level that happens. That is well into the tertiary level. But when you listen to our Prime Minister equating investment in Sir Arthur Lewis in terms of school fees of $9,000, equating that output squarely on a monetary value, how much it will cost to educate a child. Of course we need to know that. That's good for planning. But it's not only about the monetary value, Madam President, when you invest in education. When you spend money in education, first of all, it is your duty as a state to provide your citizens with a quality education. But the dollars you spend in education, it's not about the dollar value alone, Madam President. It is also about the social value. Countries that have invested well in their education system do not have to deal with some of the issues we have now. They are benefits. I just want to use, for want of a better word, incremental benefits, exponential benefits, Madam President, in investing in a good, solid education system. And I have to say that for the 2.5 years I've been around in this political arena, I have not heard one policy statement with all the money that we're borrowing to say, where are we going with this system? I am very passionate about it, and I am very worried at this time, Madam President. So when $13 million is being borrowed, and one of the social sectors was identified as education, I got a little optimistic. But when I'm hearing it's just consultation, consultants, when we have all those other issues, and our other members have mentioned them before. My alma mater and that of the leader of government business and several other members of this house, my colleague senators, our alma mater, 40 years old, never a subject of discussion as priority. All of a sudden, it needs to be fixed so badly that it needs to be removed. Madam President, these are some of the things that our government is to be addressing and borrowing money for. Why is consultancy a priority? To tell us things we know when we have issues that are critical that need to be addressed and are being put back as if they're not priority. Our premier, I've said it so many times, our premier educational institution is in limbo. As I said, from the structural perspective, or from the administrative end, you know. So what is it that we're borrowing all that money for? Madam President, I want to wrap up. So I want to say in closing that if we want to wait until people have been employed in our public service and think that we can throw money around to train them and to do workshops, and that is going to solve our implementation programs, we are making a big mistake. Let us spend that money to develop a more efficient, a more structured, progressive education, health, and social sector that is going to serve to prevent some of the problems we have to try to fix at the highest level of the public service. It is very difficult, Madam President, for people to unlearn habits that they have picked up because they were not nipped in the bud. And as an educator, I place a high value on the importance of investing, not spending money and talking about $9,000 per child. That is peanuts, Madam President.
True. True.
Compared to the value of the education of one St. Lucian.
True.
So when we talk about spending money, it's as if we are afraid of putting our money into our education to expand the early childhood development programs, to ensure that teachers, principals, and parents are comfortable where they work, to ensure that we have a comprehensive plan that will tell us what our priorities are for our young people, to keep them off drugs and so on, to give my dear colleague in national security a little breathing space, and to relieve my dear colleague in the Ministry of Health from all of the issues that we face. When are we going to realize that we need to begin to put that kind of investment directly into the education system with proper policies? That's what we need to do, Madam President. This is not something we have to go and take from the sky. You don't allow your system to get to a point where you now have to target your top public servants, your PSCs, your middle managers. You know, when people have got to that level, they would have learned a lot of bad habits. They would have worked in the system for years, and they know how to play around it. They will attend the workshops. They will sign the register. They will come. And I don't think they come with bad intentions. They come hoping to learn something new. A lot of people have a very positive attitude to learning. I'm one of them. I always think there's something to learn somewhere. So whenever I'm invited to anything where I think there is something to learn, I will go. But when you get there, Madam President, and there is nothing new, given the amount of money we were spending, then we know that it's a bad investment. So my plea this morning is that the government needs to consider where, at this time, with this tight fiscal space that we have, where it needs to be spending that kind of money to show and convince us St. Lucians that it's money well spent, that it's money worth spending, and that it has some kind of incremental value to us in the future. So, Madam President, I hope that I will get the courtesy of my colleagues, or at least my colleague from the lead of government business, to alleviate some of my fears and concerns about, first of all, and I just remind again, just to make sure that it's still fresh in the mind, of, first of all, why now? Why now? Why are you trying to find out what you need to do 2 years after you've been in government? You should have known that when you went on the campaign platform. Why now? Secondly, Madam President, why, and you see this thing about you didn't do it, and I have made my position very clear about that. I really hope that this morning, Madam President, we will not be hearing, you didn't do it in 15 years, why should I do it? Madam President, the point is, it needed to be done, and you said you were going to do it. Now do it. Just do it. Okay? So, 2 years into government, that's my first concern. 2 years into government, or 2.5 years, you have almost passed midterm. You are now going to find out what you need to do. I am very concerned. And as I said, Madam President, I'm also very concerned about why, the third point that I was making was, why is it that the system that is being used to help us find out what we need to know, the information has to come from outside, possibly professionals who have no cultural background and understanding of how our system works. And I think it would be important if that kind of information is ventilated here. So I look forward to the response of my colleagues, and I hope that if we have to come back here to borrow, that I will not have a reason to ask those very same questions that I have asked before. In other ways, but I've asked them before. Okay? Thank you, Madam President, and I do hope that these responses will be forthcoming.